Hi, my name is Lars Lee, and I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Okemos Public Schools. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about gender identity and expression and how that relates to student names and pronouns. This is all really good and helpful information to help you know and understand a little bit better when we're supporting students and their identities. I guess in a nutshell, it doesn't matter how you or I feel about students and their names, what pronouns they want to use, how they express themselves in their clothing or their hair. It's really just our job as educators and people within the world of education to honor our students' identities and wishes and make sure that they are able to be their authentic selves in our schools. So this is really about protecting them as individuals. So I just wanted to start off with this quote from Dr. Brené Brown. She says, "What we are ethically called to do is to create a safe space in our schools and classrooms where all students can walk in and, for that day or hour, take off the crushing weight of their armor, hang it on a rack, and open their heart to be truly seen." So that is what we are striving for in Okemos Public Schools, is to have schools that really belong to everyone with all of their identities and all of their differences, that we want them to all feel included and safe each and every day in our schools, and not just students, but staff as well. I'm going to show you a quick video from an organization called amaze.org, and you can check them out. They've got some really great videos. This is just a short one talking about the range of gender identities that you may come across every day in our schools.
All right, folks, here we go. A romaine and kale salad with avocado, cucumber, shishito peppers, and 4 kinds of cheese. Sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow! In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients. A rock-hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried-up tomato.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on our robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay. I remember. A very nice young... Come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now, we know gender is more complex than that.
Wait, aren't we just talking about whether you're born with a or a
When you're born, your sex is assigned in a medical way, but the sex listed on your birth certificate may not necessarily match your gender identity.
Gender identity is a person's inner experience of who they are in terms of gender, their deep personal sense of being male, female, a blend of both, or neither.
And while many people have a gender identity that's the same as their assigned birth sex of female or male, that's not always the case, because gender exists on a spectrum. Like transgender, which means a person whose gender identity is not consistent with their assigned birth sex. Non-binary, which means a person whose identity doesn't fall in the category of either male or female. And genderqueer or gender fluid, which means a person who does not identify themselves as having a specific gender at all.
Does gender identity have to do with being straight or gay?
Actually, no. Gender identity has to do with the way you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is based on the way you feel toward others, the people you may or may not be attracted to.
You know, I really like Alex, and I can tell they're a good friend to you, but I'm still pretty confused about all of this.
That's okay. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them. To start, try not to make any assumptions about a person's gender, and use the name and pronouns that they ask you to. Above all, be a friend or ally for people of all gender identities.
That's right, Mom. Oh, Alex is here. Come on in.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Alex. Care for some salad? The balsamic's right from...
Much like in a tossed salad, people often mix together 4 different parts of a person's identity and think of them as connected or the same thing, when in fact they're 4 very different ingredients. So I just want to go through those 4. This is a diagram called Unpacking the Alphabet by Autumn Campbell. And It starts with sex assigned at birth. So if you're looking at the screen, if you look, this is when it's a boy, it's a girl. When a child is born, it's their designation, and that's what's put on their birth certificate. So it's usually determined by visible genitalia, which sometimes is clear and sometimes is not. So sex assigned at birth is a very scientific thing, and it's what gets put on your birth certificate. Gender identity is a person's strong internal sense or knowledge of their own gender, and this does not connect necessarily with the sex they were assigned at birth. And a child's gender identity starts to really form at the age of 2. So we can see, you might be able to see evidence of a student's gender identity even in preschool or kindergarten. They might be telling you they're a boy, telling you they're a girl, telling you they're not either of those. So in this category, we have terms like transgender, where the sex assigned at birth does not match what the gender identity of the person is. For example, I have a friend who was born female, and that was what was on the birth certificate, but he identifies as a male and wants the world to call him by a typically male name and use he, him pronouns. Cisgender is the opposite of transgender, and that would be a person whose sex assigned at birth matches their gender identity. So in my case, I am cisgender. I was born female. That's what's on my birth certificate, and I identify as a woman. So between those two, we have gender non-binary, where a person doesn't want to be categorized in one way or another. Gender fluid, gender queer, gender non-conforming. You may have heard of all of these things. So these are all related to a person's internal sense of how they see themselves and their gender. So along with gender identity is gender expression. So this relates to how a person presents their gender to the world and to their self. You see it in clothing, hairstyle, mannerisms, etc. So somebody might be masculine or feminine. They might be gender neutral, androgynous, non-binary, etc. So those two go together, gender identity and gender expression. And the fourth piece of a person's identity, which is not connected to the other three, is their sexual orientation. So this is a person's experience of emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction to others. So words you might have heard associated with sexual orientation, which actually starts to develop in children around the age of 10. Straight, heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual, pansexual, questioning, demi-romantic, aromantic, and there are lots of other categories within sexual orientation that I don't even know about. There seem to be new ones that pop up in terms of our language and describing how people are attracted to one another. And I don't understand it, and it's not my business to try to figure out what a person's sexual orientation is. So those are the 4 categories that make up a person's identity, or parts, 4 pieces of many other pieces that make up a person's identity, but these are the ones that we tend to relate to gender. So names are closely associated with gender identity and gender expression, and therefore so are the pronouns that we use to substitute for those names. So we're going to watch another short video from Amaze to kind of talk us through what some of those pronouns are and how they work.
Gender pronouns are usually meant to reflect the gender identity of the person being talked about. She, her, and hers, and he, him, and his are the most common gender pronouns used. Some people may refer to these as feminine and masculine pronouns, though a person could use she, her, hers pronouns and not feel feminine, and vice versa. There are also people who identify as non-binary. They may experience their gender identity as neither exclusively male or female, or in between or beyond both genders. In that case, they might use other pronouns like Z, here, or a whole host of other options. The word they, which is often used to explain the actions of a group of people, can also be used to describe one person alone. For example, they rode their bike to the store. In other cases, someone may prefer that no pronouns be used at all, and that only their name be used when speaking about them. Jason rode Jason's bike to the store. There are many different pronouns that a person can use, so it's less important that you know them all, and because you can't always know what a person's pronouns are just by looking at them, it's important that you ask for and use the pronouns that the person's requested. This is a basic sign of respect for a person's humanity and identity. Actively ignoring someone's pronouns could have harmful effects on their confidence and self-esteem. For some people, pronouns may change from time to time, which means you may want to check in regularly, just to make sure you're being respectful. If you ever mess up someone's pronouns, you don't have to make a big deal out of it. Just apologize and continue to work to do better. And if you need help, reach out to a trusted adult for support and assistance.
All right, pronouns are tricky, and sometimes we forget, and it gets confusing, especially if we make assumptions about some students based on what they're wearing or what their name is. So to really affirm our transgender and non-binary students, and we do have quite a few within our district, as well as staff, if you're not sure about somebody's pronouns, you could use they. It's a pretty safe bet that instead of choosing one extreme over the other, he or she, they, is a little bit more affirming of gender identities that aren't in the binary world of male and female. Another thing that you can do is to state your own pronouns, which I should have done at the beginning of this session. I should have said, my name is Lara Slee. My pronouns are she and her, so that we just get used to kind of putting it out there. So it's not weird if we have to ask somebody, hey, what pronouns do you use? And the next thing on this list to kind of help you out is to check in with somebody. Hey, what pronouns are you using right now? Or what pronouns do you want me to use with you? Or what do you want me to call you? These are not horrible questions to ask, and I know that we have some students who sometimes they're testing out a lot of different names and pronouns, so checking in with them is the respectful thing to do. And then if you're in the classroom as a teacher, a good suggestion is to start the year off with a survey to ask students what they want to be called, if it's something other than what is on the class roster, and which situations do they want to be called by that name. Sometimes they may ask you to use a different name with their parents, and as educators in our system, we put students' rights at the forefront. So if that's what the student wants, then that's what we will do as much as we can to protect their safety and to honor their identity. So sometimes it happens, we misgender a student or we misgender a parent or a community member or a staff member. The things that we need to do in that case, just apologize briefly, don't make a huge deal about the whole thing, correct yourself and just move on. Over apologizing can be almost worse than being than misgendering someone. If you overhear somebody misgendering someone else using the wrong pronouns, hey, he goes by, Andy goes by he, not she. Correct in the moment, and then use that person's correct pronouns in conversation with your colleague afterwards, and make sure you're addressing it directly. We should just try to normalize this. We want to get it right, and we want to make sure that we are calling students what they need to be called and want to be called. And this doesn't only go with pronouns. I know that we have a lot of students whose names are hard to pronounce, and making sure that we pronounce them correctly is also a piece of honoring people's identities. So in Okemos Public Schools, we now have a process and a procedure for changing a student's name in PowerSchool to match the name they want to be called. And we are working on getting that as an official board policy. And in consultation with our legal team, we have found that the student has the right to be called by their chosen name and pronouns, even if parents disagree. So if you're trying to do right by the student and the parents are mad about it, the district will support you in that. And also, there has been a lot of research connecting students who are in the LGBTQ population, and specifically our transgender students. They are at very high risk compared to their peers for anxiety, depression, and suicide. And they have found that students who are in environments where we are using their correct name and we are honoring the pronouns they are asking us to use, that's actually suicide prevention. So we want to make sure that we're doing right by all of our students. And you don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, but we do need you to try to honor the wishes of our students. If we continue to not call them by the right name and not gender them correctly using the pronouns that they are requesting, that could potentially fall under our harassment policy, and we don't want to go there. So just do your best. Kids know when you're trying. And if you need any help or more information with any of this, please reach out to me. My email is right there. Or track one of the principals down, or directors. They know how to track me down. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.